A light bulb moment where I realized that I don't believe in this faith. I do not believe Jesus is God. Me, Muslim? I'm not going to be a Muslim. What are you talking about? Islam is a terrorist religion. These people are evil. America and other countries were going into Iraq and Afghanistan. I remember watching it on the news.
We will bring freedom to others.
Thinking, yeah, let's go and get these Muslims. Yeah, let's go and get these Muslims. You know, I was kind of like cheering them on because I'd never been properly introduced to Islam and I'd never learned the true teachings.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother John. Thanks for coming. We will be having an interview with you, inshallah. To start off with, who is John Fontain, and can you tell us briefly about your life?
Yes, so my name's John Fontain. I'm a convert to Islam. I converted in 2008. Before Islam, I was a jazz singer. I was also studying diamonds and working in Africa. So I'm from Manchester, the famous city. You know, a mixed upbringing. I went to school, college, and then I started to get into business and singing as well.
How was your life in regards to faith? What were you believing in?
I was born and raised as a Christian. So from a very young age, I used to go to church. I went to different types of churches. I also went to evangelical churches as well, which is a very different religion to Protestant Church of England religion. I was also into music. So I started to play the church organ. I played the ukulele, banjo, I played the trumpet. So I was very musical from a very young age. So in my teenage years, I got into singing. So from the age of 14, I was singing, and then when I became around 16, 17, I started to sing professionally as a job, singing in jazz clubs and cruise ships and football in Manchester United's ground and different places. It's fun, you know. In Jahiliyyah, my time before Islam, I felt like I'd got to the peak of where I could be in the music industry. You know, I wasn't going to be the #1 singer in the world. I didn't have the dark, handsome looks of a jazz singer. And when I was singing in some of these clubs, I just thought, well, I've done it. It was like I'd reached my goal, and it was an empty feeling. You know, when you've made it, you know, you've tried to work so hard to succeed in a particular field, and then all of a sudden you're at the top of where you can be, and then what? Am I going to do this for the rest of my life? It's not fulfilling. So this is why I started to look into business as well. I started to study diamonds, and that's when my journey took me to Africa and on to different things.
What was the thing that made you question your belief? Was it an event? Was it a thought? And when was it?
That's an interesting question. From a young age, the age of about 7 years old, I remember being in Sunday school in church. We had to write a song about God, and my song was called Jesus and God. And that was the chorus. It was like a rap. I had some verses. I still remember the verses. I'm not going to sing it now. And I remember the pastor, one of the youth workers, he took the piece of paper and changed the words. So originally my song was Jesus and God, and the pastor changed it to Jesus is God. And around 7 years old, I was like, what? You know, this was like a light bulb moment where I realized that I don't believe in this faith. I do not believe Jesus is God. You know, my concept of Jesus was that he's a man, he's a human being, he's a prophet of God, and there's no way I was going to accept that Jesus is God. So this was the first instance where I started to question, well, what is the right religion? Because I did believe in God, and my concept of God was what my concept of God is today. We can't imagine God. You know, he's one, he's something beyond our comprehension. But there was no way I was going to accept that Jesus is God. So this was shocking for me. From a young age, I knew, you know, what's going on. You know, all my family, my friends, my community, they're all following this religion, and it doesn't make sense. It was very eye-opening.
When did you first hear about Islam?
Well, I would say the first time I started to hear about Islam and think about it as a religion was 9/11. I remember I was in school, I was in a woodwork class. Now I was making my GCSE product of a rocking horse, and there was a lot of commotion. The teacher got the 9/11 incident on the laptop, and we were shocked, you know, that somebody had flew a plane into the World Trade Centers. And all I heard was the Muslims, it's Muslims, it's Muslims. And from then I went home and I was watching the news, and I remember when America and other countries were going into Iraq and Afghanistan. I remember watching it on the news, thinking, yeah, let's go and get these Muslims. You know, I was kind of like cheering them on, not knowing anything about Islam. All I thought I knew was that Islam is a terrorist religion, these people are evil, and that was kind of my first introduction.
For what reason did you feel the attraction towards Islam?
Initially, I was looking into Islam online. I was watching YouTube when YouTube first came out, coming across some different videos. I also, at the age of 18, I traveled to Senegal in West Africa. And for those who don't know, Senegal is a Muslim country. When I was in Senegal, I was actually quite scared of Muslims initially because of 9/11, because I had many misconceptions about Muslims. So actually going to Senegal opened my mind. I realized, number one, that there's African Muslims. I had never seen African Muslims. So I was really interested in understanding, how did Islam come here, you know. And when I went to Senegal, this was the first time I actually heard the adhan. It was fascinating. You know, I was really happy to hear the call to prayer. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand the meaning. And I met some Muslims. I came across a brother who, at the time, he was working in the hotel, and he invited me to his house, to stay in his house. So I ended up living with him for some time. I went to a Muslim wedding, I went to a Muslim funeral, and I witnessed him and his mother and his family praying. We ate together, sitting on the floor, and all these things were amazing to me.
At that time, did becoming a Muslim cross your mind?
But I wasn't convinced on Islam. So even though I liked the culture, I liked my experience, this wasn't enough to make me a Muslim. This just sparked my interest even more to it was kind of weird, because I started to attack Islam by using Christianity. Even though I knew Christianity wasn't true, culturally I was still Christian. So I started to, try to find problems with Islam, spark discussion with some of the Muslims. But the more I researched, the more I questioned Islam, the more I was impressed about the teachings and the message of the Quran. And I guess I was willing to accept Islam. When I say willing to accept Islam, I mean I was willing to give Islam a chance, because the Africans had a part to teach me about Islam.
In Senegal, did you have any memory that you cannot forget?
So I was 18 years old. This is 5 years before I converted. And while I was staying in the brother's house, who was a Muslim, his grandmother passed away, and she was 105 years old, and he was crying. He was sat on the bed crying. So I sat next to him. I put my arm around him, and I said, she'll go to a better place. And he said, I'm not crying because she's passed away. He said, she's a Muslim. He said, she goes to Jannah, inshallah. He said, I'm crying because she's a very old woman, and I wanted her to meet you so that she can make dua that you will become a Muslim. And that touched me. I thought, me, Muslim? I'm not going to be a Muslim. What are you talking about? I didn't say that because he's still upset that his grandmother passed away. But this had an effect on me. I was like, why is this so important for this man? Why is he crying? He's just lost his grandmother. He's not crying because she's passed away. He's crying because he wants me to be a Muslim. And that was something that made me think, wow, this guy actually believes. He really believes in this religion.
When and how did you accept Islam?
I eventually accepted Islam when I was 23 years old. I was doing some research, but again, at the time, I was not willing to give up singing. I was not willing to give up certain things, and I didn't know how to become a Muslim. In fact, I didn't know I could be a Muslim. I thought Islam was something you're born with, something you inherit from your parents. I'd never known they were converts to Islam. It wasn't until when I was researching, I came across videos with people like Abdurrahim Green and Yusuf Estes and other people, converts, when I realized, wow, there's actually a lot of English and American people who are accepting Islam, and I can be a Muslim. So that was something that led me to think, okay, now this is something I should look into.
So who invited you then?
I was in Egypt at the time, and I went to a mosque, and I asked my friend to teach me how to pray, and he refused. He said, no. He said, you're not a Muslim. I said, well, I believe, I fasted Ramadan, I tried to pray. He said, okay, you have to say the Shahada. I asked him, what is the Shahada? So he told me the Shahada, and I became a Muslim. I felt like a big weight was taken off my shoulders. I felt clean, and alhamdulillah, I already believed. It wasn't like the belief just came at that point. I've always believed in Allah. And then I went back to the UK. I tried to find a mosque, and I was still scared to go to the mosque. I felt that the Muslims were terrorists. I still had negative feelings about Muslims. So I went to a place. I thought it was a school, but it wasn't a school. It was a mosque. And subhanAllah, behind the reception, there was an Englishman. I was shocked, you know, as a white man walking into a mosque. I was expecting to see Pakistanis and Arabs, and there's a white man. And he helped me, taught me the Fatiha, taught me the small surahs, and taught me how to pray. Every day I would go there, he would teach me how to pray, he would listen to me read the Quran, and there were some other brothers in the mosque. I would sit there having coffee, and they would be teaching me, and that's how I started my journey.